That would like put that on loop. That would be good for your phone. Make that your ringtone. Make that your text message notification. Make that your Twitch notification every time Disorganized Play comes on. Yeah, live it. There you go, guys. Free content. That's what it's all about, is hashtag content. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. It appears that we are relatively free of technical troubles. I just jinxed it. God, son of no. Lord willing, everything goes smoothly today. You're going to get both barrels of Lommel today. I am not only doing my prep show today, we are going to be having a little action figure hack kind of action going on today, where I'm going to live convert this Aquaman action figure into hopefully some semblance of a storm giant, or perhaps a stone king. Storm giant king. So that's what's on deck today. I will actually be pausing the stream, rearranging the camera setup here, and then going live with a little painting action. So that's on deck for today. Let's see if we can make that happen. So our agenda as it stands, we are going to do a recap of the recap. We're going to talk about being up against the ropes. We're going to talk about the enemy of my enemy. Well, you're all familiar with that concept, right? But how does it intersect with what's going on in Storm King's Thunder? Well, that's a great question. It's a good thing I'm going to tackle that here in a few moments. Maybe not moments, but minutes. We're going to talk about some different ways to spool out threads. I realize I left my note on that over across the room. And then after our prep session today, we will be doing a little miniature painting live, a little live dungeon crafting, if you will. So, without any further ado, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Love the Lommel emojis. If you missed Monday Night Dungeon Fight last night, you missed several opportunities to deploy your I just got Lommeled emojis. So, it was an epic game, and it was a good time. So catch it on the VOD when you have the opportunity. It was our fourth session of Season 4. That means we now have 4 champions crowned, and we are ready in 2 weeks to go into the Season 4 championship, the Tournament of Champions for Monday Night Dungeon Fight. So, get hype! That's all I got to say about that. All right. So, without any further ado, recap of the recap. Here's what happened last session. The players had a very tenuous lead. They had a bag of coins that had some wooden gambling tokens in it. And that was their only clue that they should go maybe see Lord Dryland in Yartar. And we had already played... I should go back and look at what session that was, because it was probably like session 12 or something like that. It was literally 2 or 3 months ago. They had an encounter with... I'd basically stolen a huge portion of Chapter 11 and remixed it into the plot earlier on. But that means that because I had burned that location and burned those events, that I couldn't just replay Chapter 11 straight up the way it was written, right? So what I did was I went back and remixed, rehashed, reintegrated. Oof, boy, it took us a long time to get to the right word there. I reintegrated some parts of Chapter 9 into Chapter 11 and convoluted the mystery a little bit. So they got to Yartar, they found out that Lord Dryland was throwing a big masquerade ball. Well, I wonder what that looks like. It is not the recap, it's the prep show, guys. First of all, let's start there. Secondly, it is not the prep show, it's the invite to the Masquerade Ball, available to you in our fabulous Dropbox folder if you would like to download this and use it in your own game. So they were invited to a Masquerade Ball. They got some costumes. They were told, as it very explicitly says in the invite, do not bring any weapons or armor, and for the most part, they decided to heed that instruction. I would argue to their lament, but they still had plenty of firepower with them. Obviously, the monk doesn't need anything, and the cleric really doesn't need anything either. So that was interesting. So they got there, they found out that Lord Dryland was throwing a big party, had invited 25 different people from the Lord's Alliance to come and attend, and it turns out it was partly a celebration and also partly a prelude to a conference of the Lord's Alliance that Lord Dryland intended to institute in order to address the giant incursions that were taking place all over the land. The party also learned that the giants were wreaking havoc on trade, and they were threatening the winter supply of food, and that the lands of the Sword Coast were about on the tipping point of war, were something not to be done about this. So that was great. They didn't do a whole lot else. The Bard had a little battle of the Bards with the person who was hired there to be the entertainment. So that was cool and fun. And then, long about the time that dessert got served, Lord Dryland sprung his trap as various members of the Lord's Alliance, the lords and ladies gathered before together on the garden there, ended up getting sick and were poisoned by the 3-part poison that Lord Dryland had put into the various foodstuffs. So that was not pleasant for the party. Combat broke out. They did not have their full abilities, and they were faced down by 2 cloud giants. A cloud giant smiling one, and then, of course, Countess Sansuri from Chapter 9, who is a formidable sorceress, or at least mage, at the very least, in her own right. So she was spamming, 11 die 6 lightning bolts at the cleric in order to get the cleric to drop the banishment on Crisaro, her consort. So that was interesting. It was a very tough fought fight. They did finally manage to take down one of the they managed to take down Crisaro. No, they managed to take down Countess Sansuri, so that was cool. Lord Dryland, aka Crisaro, got away, and that was the end of the session. So it was a big double cross. They were trusting of Lord Dryland, even though they had really no reason to trust him. I think they thought maybe he was harmless, that he was just some noble gas bag hothead, and that was definitely the way that I painted him. So when he started to shape change into a giant, well, guess what? You might have underestimated who he was and what kind of threat he posed. So that was a little problematic for them. It was certainly a punch in the teeth. I don't think they felt very good about the way that the combat ended. It was not a resounding success. The main villain got away. It was a setback for them. At the very best, maybe a mixed set of results. So that's why is my phone? Hey, I have a great idea. Let's just remind my wife that I'm streaming. Streaming. Okay. Look at that guy. Look at that dog, you guys. That's my dog. How about that? There he is. All right. We've all seen it now. Tom, do you have something to share? Why don't you share it with the rest of the class? Got it. Sorry about that. So that's where we left off. I don't think I think it was frustrating because they didn't have all of their gear. That's the way that kind of combat works. It's frustrating. You have to find ways to improvise and get around to the fact that you're not wearing your armor, etc. They didn't do any sort of prep of that ahead of time, so they had to improvise, and it was not a great experience for them. Honestly, I think the fighter rogue suffered the most. The ranger actually did some prep and had a game plan. But they were facing very tough foes. The bard dropped Wall of Thorns on the fighter rogue and on the cleric, who is down at the time. So the cleric automatically fails a death save, and then the fighter rogue failed his save, so he took 7 die 8, and it was ugly. It was an ugly, ugly fight, as to be expected. So I covered a lot of like what I thought about it and how it worked and etc. on last Thursday's stream. So go catch the VOD of last Thursday's recap session. I think it will give you some valuable insight into running, or at least prepping, or putting some thought behind how to design an encounter where the players are maybe in a formal setting, but a combat is going to break out, where they're denied their equipment. Let's say they spend the night in a temple to get some healing or to get a curse removed, and the people who run the temple say, you're not allowed to be armed in here. We will check your equipment. You can put it in this bag, and we will set it in the alcove and lock it up, but you can't stay overnight in our sanctuary and be armed. That is simply not acceptable. So, something to think about. Go back to Thursday's recap and check out some of my tips on that. All right, so up against the ropes. Before I get into the next topic, I want to give you an update on our timeline of events. So the way I was looking at having it scheduled, I thought we had 2 sessions left this week and next week, and then that would be the end of it. I think I really have 3 sessions left to get to the end of March. So the book comes out on the 24th. I thought maybe that next week we would start playing Adventurers League, but that does not seem to be the case. So I thought the 24th was going to be our final session, or the 22nd would be our final session. And it looks like the 29th is available to play. So I don't think the store is actually going to start the next season of Adventurers League until, like, I don't know, the 14th or 15th of April. I'm not planning on running my AL game at the store for next season. So regardless, the point being, I now have 3 sessions to get to wrap up our storyline here rather than just 2. And that's important because I thought I was really going to have to crank the plot out, right? We took a little breather here to have a moment of intrigue and mystery for the party, and you know, we unfurled this double cross in the plot, and I thought that was successful in purpose, if not necessarily like the greatest play experience. But you know, sometimes you have to hand the players a defeat, right? And especially when they don't do anything to prep against it. And one of my purposes in playing that tough with them is to communicate, we're in the end game here. Things are going to get tough. You are going to have to be a little smarter, work a little harder, you're going to, you know, pull out some resources that maybe you haven't thought about. Somewhere along the line, they have like a gem of anti-life shell, which I gave them out of, or which they earned out of an expedition that nobody claimed. I don't know where it is. I don't know what happened to it. And is not my problem at this point. Like, it's out there, you guys. You have consumable items that aren't just potions of healing. Maybe you might want to lean on some of them, because it's not just candy that you can put in your pocket and never worry about. So just to give you an idea of my perspective going into this session, going into tomorrow, what I want to accomplish, what I think, how things are going to roll out. I was very concerned that I had 2 sessions left, and I'm looking at 2 major battles, and I feel like that's jamming a ton of plot into those final 2 sessions. That it's too much. It's a little too fast. It starts to feel kind of dizzying and railroady, and when players don't understand why stuff is happening, it's just like, oh, okay, now we're in a fight. All right, great. That can be okay, but it doesn't feel satisfying, right? It's more satisfying when they figure out, oh yeah, let's go after that guy, and then they go and they stalk the hideout or whatever it is and try and get the jump on the dude and spring their big ambush, and then there's the big boss battle fight, you know, or vice versa. You know, the big bad springs his ambush on the party, but at least they knew, like, oh yeah, we're hot on his tail, etc. So I think it's satisfying, more satisfying for the players to understand who was working against who and who's in league with whom and what the situation is, rather than go off and search and find the lair or find the guy or whatever. Here it is, go get him. Like, I would like there to be a little more follow through, or I would like a little more light shed in the players' minds on what the various factions are and who's interacting with whom. So that's a little prelude to where we are going with the rest of today's prep session. Is I now have a little bit of breathing room. I have a session after having this big knockdown fight in the garden to unspool some of these plot threads and let the players start piecing this stuff together, rather than I was going to handle this basically kind of in an offline fashion, you know, by the way, you know, in the Facebook group, just post, here's some things that you found, and from that you can figure out that, and there's a scrap of a thing that tells you that, and by the way, so-and-so, you know, you consult with so-and-so and they check on something and tell you that, you know, and the net result is, start of the session, this is where you need to go. And I think with just 2 sessions, that's a danger, right? That's something that you need to be careful of. There are at least 2 very big and, you know, bruising fights ahead of us, but I don't want the last 2 sessions to just be fights. The last session can just be a fight. That's fine. And I'll write a little postscript denouement of, and they got to keep, and they all lived happily ever after, or whatever. That's fine. But I don't want the last 2 sessions to just go straight into everybody sit down, everybody ready, okay, let's roll initiative and burn this thing out for the next 3 hours. So having 1 more session in there gives me a little more breathing room, and I'm happy about that. So good news, you guys, you get 2.5 more weeks of Disorganized play. So, all right, let's tackle our first topic that's not a recap then. We are going to discuss Up Against the Ropes. So this is a relatively short piece, but I just want to address it. And we've talked throughout these past weeks about we've talked about pacing and the flow of a session, but more specifically on a larger level, a higher level, a flow of a session back to back, you know, kind of what's the arc of the player's experience at the table, and what's the arc of the character's development as they accrue power and items and level up and become heroes in the world, right? So, you know, those things tie in together in 2 different ways. One is pacing in terms of, was it a slow session? Was it a quick session? There's a lot of jump cuts, a lot of things happen. They've got a lot of information. They pushed through a bunch of rooms in a dungeon and got to the end, and then they saw the big bad, and that was the end of it, right? That's one thing, is what's the speed of the session, okay? What is the pacing of the session and of 2 or 3 sessions back to back? Does it all feel fast? Does it all feel kind of the same? Is it bogging down what's going on with how fast the players are progressing through the plot or progressing through whatever exploration they're doing, right? So that's one thing. The other element attached to this is for lack of a better term, the win-loss ratio of the party from session to session, right? So have they had several successes back to back to back, and they're kind of a little too big for their britches, they're feeling a little overconfident, they're really not feeling challenged by the latest round of encounters that you pitched against them, etc. Conversely, Are they feeling overwhelmed, lost, stalled out, confused? You know, it's like those are the little factors that I'd put into either like what constitutes a win and what constitutes a loss, right? And you can have a very challenging session where they fight tooth and nail, but if they emerge victorious, I would say that's a winning. That's a win. That's a check in the win box, right? That's the payoff. It's satisfying. Victory. We were tested and we were proven to be the heroes that we thought we were. Conversely, you can have a session that goes really fast and really smoothly, and yet they may not know where it's leading. They may not feel like they're an active part in whatever's going on. They may not care about a bunch of the events that they participated in. They may not see the relevance. And then that might constitute a loss, even though the pacing is very quick, right? So pacing and then, whatever you want to call it, like party morale, are two different knobs that you've got to twist or adjust or slide up and down, or however you manipulate your game in your own in the game space of your mind. So I'm looking at pacing. I feel pretty good about. It has been a little slow lately. So, so look at your last 3 sessions is a great way to get a feel for this, because beyond a month, nobody really cares what the game was like. Like, that's water under the bridge at this point. If something happened over a month ago that your players are still mad about, you are in trouble and you need to talk to them about. It's a big issue that's weighing on their minds. So, you look back. I look back over the last 3 sessions. Last session was it was at their speed. Last session was a session that was taken at their speed. I was not pushing. I was not dragging on them. I was letting them do what they wanted to do. Okay, this is one way to think about what your pacing is who's driving the bus, as I like to say when it comes to like a scene. Somebody's always driving the bus if you look at a scene in a movie, right? Somebody is initiating a lot of the questions or driving the action, and somebody is responding generally. And sometimes you have situations where people ping pong off each other. They're both trying to drive the bus, in which case the bus starts to go in different directions a lot of times, right? So that is something to consider. Who was driving the bus? The players were driving the bus. I was letting them do the stuff that they wanted to do. Oh, you want to have a little relaxation time and you want to hang out and enjoy the spoils of your treasure and go to the bar and whatever it is, grab a bunch of buffet of sandwiches. Great. Enjoy the fact that you have a lot of money. You can afford to have tea on the veranda. Terrific. Spend some time thinking about what kind of masquerade ball costume you want. Great. Go ahead and do it. But if I look at the morale of the last session, that was a punch in the teeth. That was a loss for the party. They did not feel like they won the encounter. The encounter ended and the bad guy got away. And that's not a victory. At best, it's a mixed result. It's definitely a setback. It's in the most generous light. It's a complicated outcome, right? So I know that. So pacing wise, I'm kind of neutral, but morale wise, I'm low. The previous session, that was, I would say, that was not played at their pace. They were hostage to the court. They screwed up and were not allowed to drive the action of what was going on. They had to respond to the fact that the Storm Giant court was on high alert and very skeptical of them. Okay? So the pacing on that, I would say, felt slow because they were not in control. Okay? Pacing felt a little slow. Morale-wise, do I think it was a win or do I think it was a loss? I would say guardedly that it was a win. It was not a resounding victory because they really had to struggle to achieve their goal, and I think there's still kind of a stain on the party for how sloppy they operated in a situation where they were clearly warned, don't go and screw around in the Storm Giants fortress. Like you you can run around and hide if you want to, but think about the consequences if you get caught. And then they got caught. They were, however, successful in flushing the dragon out of the court and earning the trust of Princess Narissa. Princess Sarissa. They have Neri and then they have Sarissa, and I always want to say Narissa instead of Sarissa. All right, so that's 2 sessions in a row where I have kind of like, morale is not terrific. Not only that, but they haven't really gotten much treasure in the past 2 episodes. So that's kind of a third dimension that you can consider is sort of the level up power axis. Are they either gaining treasure or XP, or are they kind of struggling to climb the power curve again? And then the previous session to that was the session where they defeated Jarl Storvald and helped Jorgen ascend to the head of his tribe, which was a great victory, and they got some money and some cool stuff out of it. Not a ton, but some. It worked out. And so we had 1 high session, and then right now we're looking at our pacing. The party's kind of up against the ropes. They've been sinking into, we're not doing it. We might be outmatched here, guys, right? So when you see this happening, what you need to do, dial the knobs on your other axes of control. You can up the pace, maybe. You can try and find ways for them to be more successful than they have been. And whether that ultimately ends up in a reward of information regarding the plot, the defeat of a villain, which, particularly a long-standing villain is especially a good morale booster, or they get treasure, XP, gold, etc., 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 right? So those are kind of your 3 main kind of reward actions, your reward levers that you may want to pull. Guess what? Cha-ching! We just found out a whole bunch about the plot. Now we have leverage that we can apply to the rest of the plot and help us solve the scenario laid before us. Cha-ching! We just killed a badass monster. That always feels good. Or cha-ching! We just got treasure and or gold and or magic items. So I'm looking at this next session, because they've kind of been beaten back, let's find a way to at least pull the lever on the information axis. Let's get them soaked into the real complexities of what's going on behind the scenes here, and let's reveal to them the major forces who are working against each other, and let's also reveal some key leads that point them toward the next part of the story, right? Because it's always better when the players choose to go to a next location rather than the players are told this is the next location where you need to go. That's kind of what happened with Lord Dryland with this last session, is they were like, I don't know, what do you guys want to do? Well, we could go to Waterdeep. Like, they didn't have a strong clue, and they didn't really like the clue that was given to them. It was not particularly compelling. So I have an opportunity now to give them enough information where they feel like they're making a compelling choice, right? So that's up against the ropes. I feel like my players are up against the ropes. They're kind of, I've beaten them into a corner. That's okay. All right? It's fine for your players to not be winning all the time. That's what makes a payoff sweeter and more successful. If your players are struggling and confused all the time, then you got a problem, right? if your players always feel outmatched or always feel confused, they don't know what's going on, or always feel like they don't have a choice about where they're going, they're just going to the one place the DM thinks they should go, then you have an issue. But it's okay for them to not feel like they're the kings of the world all the time. It's one of the reasons that I think people love low-level play so much, is because at those low levels, you're always on that knife's edge of like, well, we could kill this thing and get, you know, what's in the next room, but also like 10 giant centipedes could fall out of the ceiling and sting everybody. We'd all be dead. You know, the party could be wiped out by da-da-da-da. Yeah, I don't know what's going on today. We do have, we're building numbers slowly. We're slowly building numbers. That's all. That's all. We started off a little slow, but everything's good. So thanks people for jumping in. So that's up against the ropes. That took a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I think it gives you a good idea of where I'm coming from for this next session, right? As I said, I want to pay off information for them so that they feel like, oh, okay, yeah, a little rise in confidence. We got to rise to this challenge. I've beaten them down for 2 sessions, and now, you know, and I really hit them hard this last time. That was not. I was not holding back, and they were sweating it, and they were like, this might be too much for us, and that's fine. Good. It creates drama. Just don't do it all the time. Like, don't play that hardball unless you've all decided that you're going to play that hardball. But I don't think that's appropriate for an Adventurers League game unless at the outset everybody agrees. All right, we're playing the game on hard mode. So the next session, what I'm looking at is I'm looking at where do we have to get to, right? We have to get the players to find King Hecaton. That needs to happen. Does it need to happen this session? Arguably, I would say no, right? It's a little bit... In the book as written, they go to Lord Dryland, and Lord Dryland literally says, like, oh, he's out here, and go find him, and that's what they do. And I don't like that plot hook. I think it feels a little too convenient. It doesn't foreshadow enough of what's going on. It's not super compelling. It is very quick, right? And there is something to be said for your party is 10th level. They should be able to figure this stuff out kind of. They should have the means to figure information out fairly quickly, or to deal with kind of bizarre situations that are beyond normal worldly mortals, right? Like 10th level, they're starting to become superheroes. My guys are 9th, so they're not quite there. But here's my point. I think that this short circuits it too much, and also does not reveal enough about what the intrigue that has been going on between the various members of the court, between external forces, between the, I mean, honestly, the Society of the Kraken is, I would say, a major element in the plot. They are not a major force to be encountered in the actual path of the adventure, really at all. They sort of kind of come out of the blue. So this is also an opportunity to develop the society. I don't remember exactly what they're called. Are they called the Society of the Kraken? They're called something goofy like that. Not everything's goofy in Dungeons and Dragons, you guys. That's the way it works. Da, 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 da. That's not it. That's not it. The Society of... Who's a member of... I should know this off the top of my head, but boy, it really is escaping me what the exact name is. I don't know that it really matters. All right. At any rate, so there's this cult, right, that that is beholden to this Kraken entity, and they're not revealed really through the events of the game whatsoever. Here's an opportunity that we have to do that. So all of this is a way of saying I expect this scenario, this week's session, to be one part. I would like it to be about a third of let's investigate the castle and see what we can find and what sort of incriminating evidence has been left behind. I may pick up a cliffhanger off of last session and put the party in jeopardy and have the castle, because it was a flying castle, have the castle start crashing, right? That would start the session off on a moment of drama. However, I think the party is so beaten down from the last session that they're going to feel like, I don't even know what we do, and like now he's going to crash the castle on us, like we're all going to die. They probably shouldn't die. They should be able to cast a fly spell high enough that gets everybody off or gets them off of the, if nothing else, I think the bard could probably polymorph into some sort of flying creature that might be able to carry them away. But it feels a little bit kind of like, sting, I got you. I would rather have a little more casual pickup of like, okay, here's the chaos. If you think of a movie where you have the big battle fight, and then the bad guy gets away, when they cut away, if they come right back to the scene, it's usually one of those like slow tracking shots of like surveying the carnage, and our heroes kind of like wake up face down in the mud and look up, and they look around, and they kind of pull themselves to their feet, and they go, okay, well, what just happened, right? What they don't do is it doesn't turn into, that next scene doesn't turn into, oh, okay, the floor drops out and away you run away, right? If it's that kind of back-to-back scene, you don't have that pause. And the week in between here has been a pause in terms of the action of the game, right? So keep that in mind, that the session break provides kind of a natural, like, respite, take a deep breath, okay, regroup our forces, let's explore around and find some information. So I want it to be 1/3 investigation into what's in this castle and what's actually going on with Lord Dryland. Who is he? Who is he connected to? Where has he been? Who does he know? Who has he been trafficking with? What other kind of schemes is he pulling in? Are there other people that are involved with his organization? Does he have an organization? Etc. Right? So 1/3 of it can be lifting the veil on Lord Dryland's true identity and who he actually is and connected to and running a scam on. This brings us to the next piece of our prep session today, because I want maybe a half, maybe 2/3, maybe it is only just a third. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the proportions just yet. But I think there's something to be said for the enemy of my enemy in terms of the players are now interfacing with the world on a heroic level. In other words, they are dealing with forces that have massive, massive access to power. They're dealing with the king of the storm giants. They're dealing with whatever killed the king or whatever, whoever abducted the king of the storm giants. They're dealing with a dragon who can assume the shape of a storm giant. These are not beings to be trifled with, right? This is not, let's go down to the tavern and beat it out of the local mafia lieutenant who doesn't know any better and could stand to lose a few teeth anyhow, right? This is you're dealing with world-shaking potential when it comes to the players that you're involved with. Well, let's get our skin in the game. Let's those types of players in my mind, what makes it interesting to deal with a bunch of, the Storm Giant hierarchy, the court of intrigue, the dragons, and how the dragons and the giants have a rivalry. What's interesting about that is not that these two forces come into conflict. What's interesting about that is that their conflicts are expressed through information and the actions of minions rather than direct head-to-head conflict and combat where it's Storm Giant Sword versus Dragon Tooth and Claw, and whoever draws the last shred of blood is the victor, right? So it becomes a little bit more of what I would consider a political type of game. Okay, well, that's fine and good. It's got to have an element then of intrigue challenge to it, right? So that's where I think the enemy of my enemy might actually play a role in this ability to spool out more of the plot, to pull that lever of we know more about what's going on. Because if we assume, one of the big things is there are 6 or 8 types of dragons, metallic and chromatic, and like they're clearly like designed. They were originally designed to just be at odds at each other, right? You've got the evil dragons, you got the good dragons, they fight, right? Well, now it turns out like some dragons fight giants and giants fight dragons, etc. Well, that means that you have room for conflict, political conflict of interest and intrigue between a bunch of those groups. So dragons can be against dragons. Giants can be allied against dragons. Giants can also be against dragons because there's also evil giants, right? I mean, there's definitely a mirror structure there between good giants, bad, evil giants, good dragons, evil dragons. That sort of characterization, simplicity, that simplicity of characterization is intentional and is there to be exploited, right? So I think it might behoove us to give the party an option to go and barter with somebody who wants to use the party, who wants to help them and who wants to deploy them as maybe either an agent or a what do they call it? Not a disposable asset, but where you can deny any culpability of knowing who that is. Plausible deniability, right? So somebody who's plausibly deniable, that I didn't work for them. It's it's a plausible deniability, that factor going on there, right? So there's advantage both to the party and to whoever that mysterious benefactor is. I think we have some great options in the book, especially if you look through the huge chapter 3 exploring the Sword Coast type of thing. There's at least 2 different dragons who are mentioned who might know what's going on and not want to be involved. So you look at, I think the guy's name is Slouth. Clouth. Clouth is what it is. So if you look at Clouth, or you look at, I mean, there's a bunch of different dragons in here, right? But if you look at Clouth, what page is Clouth on? For those of you following along at home, Clouth is in Clouth and Vale on page 95, and there's also a dragon, Clogiliamatar, Old Gnawbone, which is also an ancient dragon who has no small amount of spellcraft available to her, and also is noted here for where is that? Something about how she uses crystal balls. Yeah. She rarely meddles in the affairs of small folk. Even so, her collection of crystal balls allows her to stay abreast of events happening in the world. Perfect! That's exactly who I want them to talk to, is somebody who's an information hoarder who doesn't want to get their skin in the game, or maybe can't afford to be seen flying over water deep or what have you, but can give the party enough of a nudge to, you might want to go check this person out, or yes, So I think that's an opportunity. The other advantage to doing this, right? So essentially what I'm suggesting here is it's been set up that the giants are at loggerheads with the dragons, and clearly a dragon is behind the intrigue that's happening here. Well, we've had so many different encounters with giants. It's the theme of the module. That's fine. Let's switch it up and send the party to a dragon who can give them information to use against one of the other dragons that they don't like. So that's the purpose of the enemy of my enemy, is it allows us to switch up who we interact with, and it allows us to dispense knowledge that it gives us a plausible reason why the giants don't know this. Okay, well, the giants don't know this, but you know what? Somebody does. And somebody is willing to tell you, if you don't tell anyone else, that if you go and check out this certain spot at this certain thing, you might find somebody that you're looking for, but you didn't hear it from me. Okay, that's fun, that's compelling. It feels like the party is in on the plot. They're in on a secret. It gives them something to think about, of like who the factions are who are working against each other. They feel involved and engaged in a special part of what's going on, rather than go there, do the thing. All right, so that's the enemy of my enemy. So what I'm getting at is, in prepping for this session, I'd really like to think about finding a way to involve one of the dragons who's mentioned in Storm King's Thunder, and get them involved as an information asset as the very least, and as a clandestine sponsor of the party, ideally, I think is what the result there would be. All right, I got one last topic. I left my notes over here. Let me go grab those quick. I'll be right back, everybody. We're not going to do Q&A today. We might do that on Thursday, but stay tuned, because after I get done with my recap here in about 10 minutes or so, or my recap, my prep session, I'm going to do some miniature painting. We're going to do some miniature hacking with this Aquaman figure that I got off of Amazano.com. And I looked at this thing and I was like, this is going to be an ideal King Hecaton. I sort of prepped this when I thought that tomorrow's session was going to be the session that they find King Hecaton, but that's looking, given where we are in terms of our schedule, and also in terms of how I want to do a big information dump, so that when we rush through those last two sessions, there's not a bunch of like hanging questions about like why are we doing this? Who's really dirty here? Who's the bad guy? Like, I want them to have a lot of confidence in, here's the bad guy, here's what we need to go do. Okay, so let me get my notes about spooling out some of this information. I didn't go far, you guys. I'm just over here. Come on. Okay. So, here's the quandary that we're in. They killed a bad guy. They didn't get or capture the other bad guy. So, this is a very common problem in Dungeons & Dragons in general, which is you want to advance the plot and reveal information about what's going on, what's actually happening, who the villain is, and what their motivation is, but they've killed the lieutenant, the dude's dead, they can't interrogate him. Smart players will capture everybody, and that presents its own challenges, but the point I want to address today is, how do I spool out threads of plot and give the players bits of information that they can then process, integrate, assemble, and use to form a plan of action? when they don't have somebody to talk to, they don't have somebody to address, they don't have somebody they can interrogate and intimidate, etc. All right, so here's some time-honored ways that I have addressed this situation. So the big advantage here for the party is they're on the home turf of Lord Dryland, right? He apparently has abandoned his castle. His cover's blown. He's off. He's gone. He's got to go. Okay, well, he's left behind an entire castle of what, right? So now we go from, instead of it being a role-playing exercise of I ask you questions and you tell me what I want to know, or I'm casting Zone of Truth, or I'm going to, you know, rough you up, or whatever type of interrogation method your party is inclined to pursue. Instead of an interrogation scene, you have to have kind of a mystery investigation scene. More of an let's put it this way, it's more of an interrogation of the territory than it is an interrogation of the person. So we are going to examine the area here for clues and see what we can put together. Okay, there are some very quick and obvious ways to do that, and there are some more finessed ways of incorporating information about the plot into a dungeon environment, for lack of a better term, into a set of information that the players can acquire and analyze through search checks or what have you. So a couple things that I want you to consider when you're putting together these types of encounters and you want to use a way to move the plot forward that doesn't involve directly somebody spilling their guts, right? So the most common, I would say, I've seen it over and over in various modules and whatnot, and it's easy, it's fine, like it's plausible, I just feel like it's a little overused, is the madman is keeping a diary. Okay? They find the diary of Alistair the Black, and he has written down his entire life story, and as you flip through it, you realize that he has decided to summon a terrifying being from the far realm to come and devour the sun, or whatever it is, right? I'm not a huge fan of those because, number one, I would love like the handout to be an actual diary and all filled out with all kinds of stuff. But a lot of times it's, you know, there's a couple, you know, pages that strike you. Make a search check. There's a couple pages that strike you. Or there's a couple dog-eared pages that have like a ribbon in it. Or the most recent entry is whatever. It's a fine technique. I'm not saying don't ever use it. I'm saying be careful of using it because it's so commonly used that it feels like, for anyone who has a lot of experience playing D&D, it feels like, here, I'm handing you the rest of the plot. Oh, by the way, here it is. Here's your big clue. Go do the thing. It's one step removed from go do the thing, right? And if it's a single handout especially, it can be very direct. If it's multiple things that they kind of have to piece together, then it can be a little more satisfying for the players to examine these various pieces and collate the information and try and draw connections between them. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Another method that I like to use is, rather than a journal or a diary, I like to use correspondence. So I don't know if you remember, I don't even know if I have it in the Dropbox still. Let me see if I have that letter here. Hang on. That's not it. That's not it. I might have deleted it just because it was such an old piece of correspondence. Yeah, I don't have that. All right. So, but what I like to do, I'm gonna print it off because I have a very specific example that I want to share with you that makes a point about how to write these things. I just went over here, you guys. I have another computer over here. It's great. I have 2 computers. Ha ha. Oh God. All right. Here we go. No, that's not the thing. That's not it either. Here we go. All right, thanks for bearing with me here. All right. Wow, yes, I lommeled myself. It's true. All right, if you guys look in the Dropbox folder, there's a new thing called Chapter 1, Warwick Letter. I don't know why it's called Warwick, because I signed it something else. This is a piece of correspondence that the party found when they were searching the poisoner's lair. I don't know if you remember way back at the beginning. They found Jorgen, and then they found another set of caves where they were brewing the poison that was keeping Jorgen unconscious, right? They found a letter. Now, the most important thing about the letter is you have to remember who's sending and who's receiving the information. Okay? This is in the lair of the poisoner. So what you would be inclined to do is to have a letter that's like, "Dear boss, why don't you send me some more gold? I'm mad that you are keeping me, stationed in this crap hole goblin cave, feeding this relatively slow-acting and uninteresting poison to this frost giant. I would like a more glamorous assignment." Right? You're tempted to write the letter from the perspective of whoever lives there. Okay? If we were to go to, if we're exploring Lord Dryland's lair, we're tempted to leave information there from the point of view of Lord Dryland. But if it's correspondence, he's not going to have his own letters there. Okay? It's not like email where you can go in the sent file and read everything that the guy wrote. The letters that he has sent are gone. They're at their various recipients around the world. However, we can still communicate the same information. We just have to look at it from the perspective of whoever is responding to him. I'm doing some really good yelling today, you guys. So, listen to this. Keep in mind, this was found in the poisoner's lair where they were keeping Jorgen captive. Sadarga, how dare you accuse me of improperly supplying you? 'Tis true the cult of the dragon has suffered some minor setbacks in recent months, but I assure you that the fees outstanding to you and your company shall be paid thrice over once we receive the first ransom payment from the giant's family. Now, we're one paragraph in that is literally Well, I write long sentences, so that's literally 2 sentences. However, we have a ton of information right here. How dare you accuse me of improperly supplying you? This guy's not happy. He's pissed. Apparently he's writing to his boss. Number 2, we know that the Cult of the Dragon has suffered some setbacks in recent months. Well, okay, now we know who's involved. It's the Cult of the Dragon that's involved. Not only that, but they're not doing very well. Very important. I assure you that the fees outstanding to you and your company, underlining the fact these guys have not been paid for a while. They're upset. They don't like their assignments. The Cult of the Dragon must be in serious trouble if it's behind on its bills. Shall be paid thrice over once we receive the first ransom payment from the giant's family. They're going to ransom this giant. He must be somebody important. We got that out of 1 paragraph. I mean, you can read the letter for yourself. It goes on, you know, for basically 2 more paragraphs. But all you have to do, that is the letter. Thank you, Fuckwad. All you have to do is write as if you're responding to someone that this correspondence has been ping-ponging back and forth a few times, and that his boss is giving him a status report or responding to his complaints. Okay, I will now address your complaints. You know, your points are well taken. To respond, I find that your assertion that blah, blah, blah. Well, now we know what he said, right? Not only that, but if you have a letter like this, you can introduce some unreliable narrator type of stuff where the person is responding to something and they have a different take on it than maybe what was stated in the original correspondence. As James V points out, the unsent letter is also an opportunity for you. They've drafted it, they folded it, they thought about it several times. I don't know whether, yeah, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. It's not great. You get just as much mileage out of something like this. And not only that, but I have a lead now. Who the fuck is Freak's Flame Tongue? I want to find that guy. I have a name. That's not the guy that I just stabbed in the gut and whose blood is all over the sanctuary. Nope, I know. I want to find this Frank's Flame Tongue guy. He's involved in the Claw of the Dragon. Great, let's get him. Now I've got a lead. I know a little bit what he's like, etc. So not only does this give you illumination into maybe like somebody who the party has dispatched and what they were up to, but it also opens up leads for you to investigate and go further and give the party people that they can now identify and ask about and follow up on. Another opportunity for you to dispense some plot information. Fearful maps, right? Nothing better than, okay, you find a map and there's some places on the map that are circled. There's some notes in the margin. That's also somewhat cliche, but it's a really compelling handout for the players to hold on to, right? Like, that's a really compelling piece of, like, everybody loves look. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I just love looking at maps. But looking at the map like that, okay, you can think about what places are there, and why did they put an X here, and whose name is scribbled in the margin, and there's a password or whatever. It leads you into this whole world of treasure finding that is so classic, but also so dynamic and fulfilling that it's hard to ignore the opportunities that are offered up there. If you pair a map with some good correspondence, the players have a little bundle of information which they can act on, which doesn't feel like they've just been hit over the head with the clue bat. Move on, here's the next thing, go. God, get out of my hair. Likewise, you could find a set of ledgers, okay? In the real world, politics always goes, follow the money, right? You can have the same thing in your fantasy world. Who are they making payments to? You can outright state, oh, it looks like there's some blackmail going on. There's some things that are funny about the books. They look a little cooked. You find a second set of books, etc. That's fun. That's interesting, right? Likewise, you could have goods, items, or pieces of adornment that might be unique to a particular person or locale. In the dresser drawer, you find inside a small locked metal box a very expensive necklace that is carved and adorned. That's carved out of bone, but it's adorned with large pieces of jade, and that jade is only known to be found in such and such a location. Or this piece of jewelry is very clearly an original work of such and such a jeweler. They're still alive. You can still go talk to them. Or they're dead, but their collection has largely been amassed under one particular person who's a real aficionado of that artisan or whatever, right? So you can also use exotic or unique items, or really, I mean, you know, I consider them sort of like pieces of treasure or flavor text. Things that don't necessarily have inherent meaning. I mean, you can do that too, but things that don't themselves lead you to a specific clue, but you can go, you know what, there's 5 different pieces that are all from the same guy. Where did he get this? Who's been fencing this stuff? It's very expensive. Somebody would have noticed that this is moving around. And if they didn't, somebody very well connected must have covered it up. So let's find either of those 2 guys. So those are just some main options that you have for spooling out some of these plot threads when they're not doing an interrogation, when you want to have an investigative type of portion of your session that leads you someplace, right? That allows you to unspool information about the plot, but not in an obvious way. My final point on this is beware of things that are just A to B, that are just lead the party directly from one thing to, you know, from here to Yartar. And that's what we essentially had with the little golden goose tokens, is you remember this guy in Yartar. Okay, let's go there. It's simple, it's straightforward. It really expedites player action, but it feels a little bit railroady because they don't know why they're going there and they don't have multiple leads that point there. Okay? If it was 2 or 3 things that pointed to Yartar, so maybe there was the coin, maybe there was a recent bill of passage on a ship out of Yartar. If it was 3 things that led the party that were all connected to Yartar, okay, maybe we should go find out what's going on here. Maybe Lord Dryland knows somebody, or maybe they can put the button on who might have been on this ship, etc. Right? They have a few hints, then the party goes, oh, we've put a couple pieces together. Yeah, this seems like our strong lead. Okay? When it's their only lead, they feel like they're being railroaded. When they have a few pieces that they can confidently assemble into a course of action, then they feel like they have a lead. The thing I would be careful of you with is, if you don't want to do A to B, also be careful of going A to B to C to D to E, where it's so convoluted that where they actually end up finally going is 5 steps removed, and the players lose the plot and lose what all the connections are, and kind of feel like they're being led around by the nose on a wild goose chase, right? So you want to make it enough elements that it feels like the players have put together a solid lead of where things are going, but you don't want to make it so disparate and disconnected and obtuse that they don't get where is this going, that they could just get lost in the details. And I will say, like, I'm guilty of making it a little too abstract, that not drawing a line between the pieces, and you go, well, okay, I don't get it. Sometimes you're just stuck. Like, sometimes you give the party 3 different hints that they need to go sit in on this poker game, and then you tell them, well, the guys at the poker game aren't the high rollers, but they do spend, they aren't the guys involved in the mob, but they spend a lot of money and they run a high stakes game. And I've seen my party just like go, no, we don't want to go there. Okay, I tried to give you a hint where you're supposed to go. Apparently, it wasn't enough. We got to find another way. You know, your alternative there is to find whatever way that they found and make it work for your plot. Plot's not sacred, guys. What's going on is not sacred. I am clearly screwing with a whole bunch of the plot in the book. It's fine. It's not going to change. Other than them comparing notes with other people and other groups, where, you know, well, who's Harshnag? We travel with a guy named Jorgen. All right, too bad. Like, I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel like I'm so far afield that it's cheating or wholly inventing just random, bizarre side quests for them to do. That's not my intent. My intent is to use the book and remix the elements in a way that tells a strong and compelling story. So, those are some techniques that you can use to spool out this type of information. That's what we're looking at for our next session, is having kind of a, you know, for lack of a better term, an info dump session, a real hardcore investigation that's going to pay off, along with probably some negotiation, some wheeling dealing with some greater forces. Maybe along the line, they're going to have some random encounters with some agents of the cult of the Kraken gods, or whatever it's called. I never found out the name. I'll figure that out before tomorrow night. But that I think that's going to, more information is going to make them feel more confident. It's going to turn the morale and turn the direction of the player's experience, the player's outlook, and give them kind of some forward momentum going into the final 2 sessions after that. So that's our prep mode for the day. I hope you guys have gotten some good information out of this. I do encourage you, don't worry, I'm not really, I'm sort of officially wrapping, but I'm not officially wrapping. I am going to do some miniature painting here. I just need like 10 minutes to rearrange the cameras. That's really all I'm going to do, and maybe get some bowls of water out and kind of get my workspace together, but it's not going to be very long. So stick with me here if you want. I'll be happy to, as I'm painting, answer some questions and whatnot, and deal with some of, just do some general hangout time is what this next thing is going to be, as I share kind of my technique for repurposing this Aquaman figure for a Storm Giant, to be a Storm Giant miniature. And I think it's going to work great. So that's what's coming up immediately after this. So if you're thinking about checking out, think again, party people. All right. In the meantime, so that's Craft Hack coming up in almost no time whatsoever. In the meantime, oh, that's not anything. Let's just delete that. It didn't turn into anything. Yes. All right. Let's take a quick look at the calendar, because we've got some very exciting stuff coming up for you this week. Right. Tonight, Hoy Chummer. You can catch DM Tyler Rhodes running Shadowrun for you guys. That'll be fun. Wednesday night is Misadventures. Thursday, I'm back at 2. Thursday night at 8 o'clock, a whole new, brand new session of Star Wars Edge of the Empire. Never Tell Me the Odds. We got a new cast, and it's a new night. It really should be exciting. DM David Crennan is in the hot seat for more Star Wars action. But most importantly, this weekend is our big Saving Throw Marathon fundraiser. We're trying to raise about $5,000. So far, we've got $1,000 or so in the kitty. We have got some great prizes and some great gaming on tap for you this weekend. Now, the theme is a spring formal, a night to remember. It kicks off Friday at 8 with the season finale of Black Bag Vikings. That is our weird historical Call of Cthulhu game. I believe that's the season finale for Mr. Wes Otis, so check that out starting Friday night at 8. Friday at midnight, it is the completely improvised role-playing game Roll for Shoes. There really are no rules. There are some rules, but the rules keep evolving as the game keeps evolving. You don't have a set of ability, just roll for shoes. So check that out. That'll be great. At 3:30 in the morning, Los Noches del Fuego, Tlinguera is hosting a Telenova RPG. I have no idea what that is going to be like, but guess what? If it's 3:30 in the morning, or 6:30 Eastern Time. I don't know what you do with your Saturday mornings. I'm usually awake right around 6:30. I own a dog. I encourage you to check that out. At 7 o'clock, Mr. Gaurav Galati will be hosting Betrayal at the House of the Hill, just the magnificent board gaming masterpiece of horror and also awfulness, because somebody ends up being the bad guy, right? So that's at 7 o'clock. Weird, what's this 10:30 thing, huh? 10:30 Paranoia. I named that game. I thought that was in the spreadsheet, but apparently it's not out there. I believe it's called Fast Pass to Wizzy World. Clearance Upgrade. Fast Pass to Wizzy World Clearance Upgrade. For those of you who have not played Paranoia, it is a satirical game set in the near future, I guess. Basically, it's Fallout meets communist paranoia. So imagine that everybody got imprisoned in a Fallout-like vault, and they were all beholden to the whims of the computer. The computer! And anyone who disobeyed the computer was a traitor because they were a communist. That's exactly what happens. Also, everybody is a clone and has multiple clones, so as you go through and root out traitors or defective clones, you just nuke them. So there is a lot of death, goof-offery, mayhem. It is definitely like Gonzo role-playing at its goofiest, and it is a classic game. If you have never been involved in Paranoia, I encourage you to tune in. I will be running that game. If you are a Patreon backer, you have some opportunities to provide encounters for my weird and demented version of Disney World. No, it's not Disney World, it's Wizzy World. That the party will be exploring, as well as providing quirks and mutations as our clones get destroyed. New clones are going to be deployed, but they're not perfect copies. Will a deck of cards be involved? Of course, it's a Tom Lomble joint. Of course there's going to be a weird deck of cards where you're going to have to draw some horrible shit. Also, as an added bonus, my wife is playing in the game. Amy Vorpal is playing. Eric Reichert is playing. Stephen Pope is playing. I'm trying to remember who my fourth is, but or my fifth. But we've got a great lineup of players. So my wife doesn't often play in a stream online, so I think it's going to be a fun... She's a fun role player. I'm looking forward to actually gaming with her and having you guys sit in on that. So that is happening at 10:30 on Saturday. At 2 o'clock, I'm sitting in. Jordan Pridgeon is running Fiasco. So if you've never watched a game of Fiasco or played a game of Fiasco, it is literally, so the best way I can describe it is the Coen Brothers RPG. It is a game of strong characters, dire circumstances, and utter failure. It is a wonderful, wonderful journey down the road of shit going wrong creek. So tune in for that. Please tune in for that. I'll be playing that. We've got a good cast for that too. So that's at 2. And then at 5:30, we have Advanced Lord of the Potter Wars Jeopardy. That is our all-star trivia section where we will be having AD&D trivia, Lord of the Rings trivia, Harry Potter trivia, and Jeopardy questions, all mishmashed together for fun and entertainment. So we got some great stuff going on this weekend in our 24-hour marathon. Please join me in a big weekend of gaming. That's going to be super fun. If you are interested in what I'm doing over at Geek and Sundry tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I will be sitting in once again as the DM for the Bearded Men West. We'll be doing Dungeons & Dragons, the improvised campaign, where we make up an entire self-contained Dungeons & Dragons adventure right on the spot based on your suggestions. So you can join me for that over at the GNS tomorrow at 2. All right, went a little bit over. What are you going to do? Check in. I'm going to go for 7 minutes. So at 3:30 Pacific time, I will have the stream back on, and we'll be queued up for what I am calling. Oh, did I put it in here? Hang on, let me add it quick because I'm a little bit proud of the title here. Where is my title card? Boom, boom, boom. No. Oh, what? No. Did I not add it here? Come on, guys. You'd think I would be good at this computer thing by now. There it is. All right. Open. Okay. That's right. Disorganized Paint. Miniature painting for the rest of us. That is coming up in literally 5 minutes. So for those of you who are with me, stick around for that. That's going to be some hangout time. And if you have some RPG Q&A or you just want to hang out and ask questions or whatever, you can join me for Disorganized Paint in 5 minutes. So that's my prep time. I will be back in 5 minutes with Disorganized Paint, but if I don't see you in the meantime, let's dungeon. No. I broke the streak.